not Shemp or Curly better on the Three Stooges? Curly?
Oh, you're Curly. Yeah, you're
Curly.
Curly.
Was pretty funny. Yeah, and we're the only guys old enough to remember these shows. Yeah. Okay.
My husband loves them, and if I said anything but Curly, it'd kill me.
Slapstick comedy is hard. I mean, that was hard stuff to do. I mean, that was very hard.
Are we doing that tonight?
Yes.
Don't we do that every show? I was not informed.
Yeah.
We can make it up as we go along, just like we do always do.
So,
You gotta start coming to these 4-hour pre-show meetings.
how close are we? Have we started? Oh, we're online now. This is like happening. Well, hello. Now, which camera are we going to look in? This one or this one over here? We're looking in this. So everything's working.
Where's Bill?
The whole thing is working. Welcome. This is WeatherBrains episode 509. This is for October 19th, 2015. This is the pre-show. This is that wonderful time of the show where we get our technical act together, and we've been doing a pre-show for like 30 minutes here.
Oh yeah.
So what we're about to start the show here shortly, but we're going to introduce the guests we have here, starting on the morning zoo crew side. Dr. Doswell is legendary, my mentor in convective local storms. And where do you buy those hats? That's the first question we want to ask.
This one's from Walmart.
Okay, there you go. This segment brought to you by the hat department at Walmart. Very nice. And we have Nate Johnson from WRAL Television in Raleigh, North Carolina. Nate, say it. You've been live tweeting all day. Are your fingers exhausted?
No, fingers are doing okay. Wrists a little crampy, but yeah, fingers are doing all right. I got the magic fingers, man. It's good.
Yeah. Show title. Show title.
Started.
If you didn't hear that, say it one more time.
If you need to give me, if you need me to give you a finger, I'll be happy.
All right, there you go. That's our show title, probably. We have the man that looks like Colonel Sanders, but we've learned that he looks more like Santa Claus. Brian Peters here. This is the pre-show. This is not going to be on the audio show.
Ho, ho, ho.
And down here, this is our official. This is where the hard work will be done. Dr. John Scala, the man with hair like an angel. That's unbelievable. I'm going to go tug on that thing before we get out of here to be sure it's real.
I'm a lot younger than you, you know.
I know you are.
I'm going to go with the age jokes already.
No. You too can have hair like this.
We have Dr. Bill Murray over here, who has no hair. He's in the hair club for men. We were in the same club.
Yeah, the transplants didn't take.
No, they really didn't.
So, James, make sure you invite Rick Smith because he's going to do some roving reporting. He's going to hit the observation deck and the OU Weather Lab and the mezzanine.
We can go live in other parts of the building.
If you can bring him into the hangout, if that works, guys. Does that work? Technical? We're not used to professional.
No, we're not used to this at all. And the accelerant is going to say something outrageous. Go.
I'm thrilled to be here, but I keep looking for Marshall Shepard because isn't this the Weather Geeks program? I was told this was Weather Geeks. What is?
We got a guy from the Weather Geeks here.
What is
we
this
got the
show?
executive
What is
producer.
this?
He's going to be on later.
Stephen, you're with Weather Geeks. All right. We're delighted you're here.
That's the show I was looking for.
It's a few hundred miles east of here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get this thing
exit's right
started
there.
here. We got things to do. All right.
Are you here like an industrial espionage?
So
No, he's
for our editor, our producer JP, good luck on putting this show together. That's all I can say.
Hey, James.
Yes.
I hear they're actually working out how to bring the two shows together. And after this night, it's probably a done deal. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's going to send it right down the tubes for sure.
Well, I think this is called scouting. I think that's what's taking place.
Oh, it's not industrial espionage. You're scouting.
He ain't gonna find anything up here.
Oh yeah, this is working. All right, so anyway, here we go. This is going to be.
Pass that mic and use your big golden thing since you.
Well, it's just a prop for tonight. All right, just a prop. It doesn't work.
He traveled with his own microphone.
Oh, he travels everywhere with that microphone. It's like Chuck in the
look, before we start, just to let you know, most people listen to the audio show, but the way this is going to work, the serious work's going to be done down here. The wisecracks are going to come from this table right down here. There'll be frequent interruptions and wisecracks. All right. No, since you're here, we know it's going to be good.
Not allowed to be serious.
You can be serious. You need to sit right here, pal. Yeah,
James, the accelerant needs a fuse. That's why he's down there.
Yeah. So here we go. Boy, this is really strange. I don't have to turn on the recorders because I'm not recording this. I don't have to do anything.
It's in your hands.
We're just on.
Don't screw it up.
Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains episode number 509. We are live. We are live at the National Weather Association annual meeting, and we are at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. The house that this man built, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Chuck Doswell is here.
I prefer to call it the Intergalactic Weather Center.
No,
If you're going to be arrogant, you might as well go all the way.
so what we have the Weather Enterprise here in one place. Kevin, you okay? You got offended or something. So we've introduced everybody in the pre-show. So for the actual show itself, we're going to send it right down to our NPR table. Brian, are you the moderator here? Looks like you're just sitting up there.
No, I just got this center seat.
Okay. So we're going to kick it down here to Bill and Dr. John. Great.
All right.
And you guys take it away. You guys take it away, and we'll have some wisecracks.
All right, James. Try to keep it down at this end as much as we can. It gets a little sour down at that end. I think we first want to bring in Janice Bunting, who's the executive director of the National Weather Association. She's brought this meeting to Norman. This has been an outstanding meeting, and Janice has got several comments to make about what's happening this evening. Janice?
Thank you. We're excited you're all here. We're especially excited that WeatherBrains is here broadcasting live. We're having record crowds at the NWA annual meeting this year. We've had 600 plus people check in so far, over 700 registered. So, yeah.
But Birmingham still holds the record.
We're gone. We got blown out of the water.
With registrations, we're blown out of the, and I think we are very close to blowing it with the check-ins. So tomorrow I expect that. But we're excited to be here. There's lots of neat things to see here at the Weather Center. Go out and check the NOAA offices out, and go check the Oklahoma Weather Lab. That's a lab run by students. They set that all up, organized it. They have AWIPS running on their computer systems. They have a Barron graphics system. They broadcast the weather for OU Nightly, the OU TV show on the weeknights from that Oklahoma Weather Lab. So check that out. We've got the traveling weather museum that they're building a weather museum here in Norman up on the second floor, along with a radar truck. And Weather News, which is in One Partner's Place across the parking lot, is taking small groups in for tours. They're a company that does weather routing for ships all across the world. So I'm sure I've left something off, but I hope you have a wonderful time networking and seeing the place, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Hey, Janice, you're awesome. We appreciate everything you're doing for the association. I know this is your second year as the executive director. And of course, we got Steve Harned, who is the past director, and we're going to have him on in a little bit. And it's fantastic to have you on the show tonight. So thank you for everything you're doing. Awesome. Now, the broadcasters' dinner, the last bus leaves at 7 o'clock. So we got to get John Tui Morales in here from NBC in Miami, and he runs the weather for most of the Caribbean, I think. John, it's nice to have you here tonight.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. This is a fantastic meeting, having so many people out here. I want to congratulate the National Weather Association for, well, just getting so many people out here to Norman. I mean, 600 and almost, we might be close to 700 before it's all said and done. So I'm not a charter member, but I've been a member of NWA for a long, long time. So I'm proud to see that the organization is doing so well.
Well, it's amazing to see all those charter members when they called for them today. You know, there's still several that have been around 40 years, which is just amazing. So I wish I were a charter member, but anyway, I look like a charter member.
That's why I brought it up.
Thank you, John. Now, John, they're going to be counting the hanging chads here between now and November 15th. So you got a little election coming up. So it's time to go out and vote early and vote often in the AMS, right?
Well, like we do in Miami, right? So the AMS election closes soon. It's less than 3 weeks away from the end of the election. It opened August 1st. They no longer send out paper ballots in AMS. And participation is down to about 10%. All right, out of the 13,000 members, only about 1,300 people are voting. So AMS members in this crowd, and they're listening online right now, your vote counts for 10, just like it does in Miami. Hey, I'm from Miami. I can do that. Matt Parker is the other candidate for president-elect. Matt Parker from Savannah River Lab is a terrific guy. He's former commissioner on the Weather and Climate Enterprise Commission there at AMS. I'm former commissioner on professional affairs at AMS. I think it's a win-win for the society. Vote for whomever you want to vote, but please participate. I'm constantly tweeting about it. I'm just trying to get people to the voting booth. It's electronic only. Just go in there, pull the lever. There's a terrific slate of candidates beyond just Matt and myself. There are many running for council in AMS as well. And AMS is transitioning now into their second century pretty soon. And we just had a meeting there in Boston with Bill Gale and Bill Hook. And we're talking about the evolution of AMS as we head into the second century. And so this is a very important time at AMS. It's important to have the right leadership at council and the executive committee at council. So if there's ever been an important time for you to participate in the AMS election, I think this time around is the time to do it. So I urge you to do it tonight if you can, if not tomorrow, but the time is short. We don't have a lot of time to get that vote in, so please participate.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for being here, John. It's outstanding to see you. You're a good friend of the show, and we appreciate you very much. And don't embarrass yourself at karaoke tonight. It could cost you the election. It could win it. It could cost you, John. So be careful.
I'll just sing something in Spanish. Nobody will know what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah. You can't miss with that. That's outstanding. Thank you, John. Yes.
I'm grabbing the microphone. We had the 2016 AMS president here a few minutes ago, but he has student sessions tonight, so he can't be here.
That's
Fred Carr.
Oh, great. Yeah, we just missed him. But we've also, now what we've got tonight, we've got Bruce Thomas, who is sort of running the show and, keeping us posted on, he's running around getting all sorts of guests for us. And that's what his job is tonight. Kevin, have you been introduced?
To these people?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that was the pre-show. It doesn't count.
And Rick is going to run around and give us some nice observatory deals. But it's nice to have you here tonight with us. But tell us what you're up to now.
Cool. So my name is Brett Borkhardt. I'm a senior here at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm also the president of the Oklahoma Weather Lab. Now, the Oklahoma Weather Lab is a fantastic opportunity here at the University of Oklahoma. We're a student forecasting group. We forecast for the entire state of Oklahoma, as well as Key West, Florida, and Rogue River, Oregon, 3 times a day. So essentially, this is a way for students to learn how to forecast without the pressure of a grade. We have student shift leaders who run the shifts. We have workshops every single month. Last month, we had a workshop on AWIPS, the basics of AWIPS, because we actually have AWIPS in our headquarters, just on the first floor. To my knowledge, I think we're the only university that's teaching students how to use AWIPS too.
Does the campus weather service at Penn State stand a chance against you guys?
Nope, they don't. Not a chance. In fact, they should check out our new space. We have a brand new headquarters on the first floor of the National Weather Center, front and center, right when you walk inside on the right-hand side. Those of you who are here, check it out if you can. We'll give you a tour. Again, we have AWIPS. We actually have our media system is with Barron's as well. So we're teaching people how to use that software on the air as well. And it's a pretty sweet deal.
What about your online presence? Where's that?
Yeah, so we do have a website. It's owl.ou.edu, and that's where we do have our forecasts. We also do run our own models. Right now, we are actually going through an upgrade with our modeling page, so we're going to stay tuned on that. And then we are definitely on Facebook and Twitter as well at OU Campus Forecasts. We forecast for the campus, as well as OKWX Lab for Oklahoma Weather Lab on Twitter.
How many people?
So we have about 800 followers on Twitter. We have about 2,000 likes on Facebook. We'd certainly like to bump those up. So those of you out there. Forecasting, yes. So again, we do have shifts every single day, 3 shifts a day. We do have right around 90 to 100 people within the club. So they are forecasting, yes, on a daily basis. And again, the shift leaders are our upperclassmen students who are teaching that, passing down their forecasting knowledge to the students.
Well, that's great. But thank you for being here tonight, and we love having you here. And I think Rick will be up to take a tour in a few minutes if James will give him an invite to the hangout. So James, that's a hint to you down there at the other end of the table. Give Rick an invite so he can do some mobile roaming.
We can make that happen. By the way, Brian is playing poker up here. Brian, please pay attention.
Well deflected.
Yeah, he's playing one of those online fantasy sports games where the cheaties, insider trading over here. So anyway, where's Bruce Thomas? He's supposed to be giving us a guest. I've always wanted to have Eleanor Vallier-Talbot on the show. Eleanor from the National Weather Service in Taunton, Massachusetts. Eleanor, come down here and say hello to us. I've wanted to, I call Eleanor every time there's a big event in the Northeast, and she always says, some excuse why she can't be on the show. So
She was too busy being in Curious George. I've got a 5-year-old. Yes. You know what I'm talking about.
I was Curious George.
I've got a
that's right.
5-year-old and she loves Curious George, and one of them was about weather. And at the end of these Curious
Red
George
sky
things,
at night, monkeys delight.
Yes,
I'll
and
never forget it.
and so
I've
they
been wearing it
they took a
forever.
camera and a group of kids into the Taunton office.
Betsy Kling's kids.
Yep.
I've seen it too, and she said to me today. She said it was the other show that she said on there, and I said no, it's Curious George. And she said, oh yeah, that one.
You did quite well.
Thank you.
So, Eleanor, one of my favorite weather books is on my bookshelf, and you are the official author of that book. One of the official authors. So, talk about all the things you've been involved in, and talk about the education committee of the NWA.
Right. Yeah, I've been a member of the education committee for about 15 years now, and I served for 6 years as co-chair. We also had several teacher workshops that we ran during the NWA meetings, and we had the big one in Birmingham 4 years ago, and then they ran one here this past weekend. We're also starting to work on getting planning together for next year's in Norfolk, Virginia. So we're real excited about that. But we do a lot of stuff with the satellite on the brain. With the grading of the scholarships, as well as the CoCoRaHS education grants for educators across the country. So we our educators to bring weather and science to the classroom. So we there's a $750 grant to different teachers, depending upon the funding for each year. It's 4 to 8 teachers, depending upon the funding. It's all supported by the members of the NWA, and it started over 20 years ago, named after Saul Hirsch, who passed away last year. He was very much into weather education for the following generation. So when he retired as executive director of NWA back in 1993, it was his retirement gift was the grant, to start the grant, and the grant's been going strong, and we're thrilled to see the applications that come in from all across the country. And one of them actually was awarded this year to the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Girl Scouts of Western Massachusetts and Central Mass. So they asked me to present the check. So it was very, very nice. I had a great time with that. But I'm very much into weather education. I've been 30 years with the National Weather Service, and I've done a lot of work with outreach and education for my offices that I've worked at, including Charleston, South Carolina, Portland, Maine, and of course the Boston office.
Eleanor, I wanted to ask you a question. At the Birmingham meeting, I was asked to be the luncheon speaker for all of the science teachers that were in Birmingham. There was more than 100 teachers at that meeting. And what struck me was the enthusiasm they have for enhancing their knowledge of the field. Maybe you could talk about that.
I think the thing is, I don't know if you've ever worked with teachers directly. I have over the years, and that's the one thing, no matter what part of the country you're in, it's amazing how much the teachers want to provide the best education possible for their students, whether it be mathematics, whether it be science, whether it be art, whatever. They just want to provide the best education possible for their students, and they'll do anything they have to do that, including spending their own money to getting materials that the students need in their classrooms. And that is part of the reason why it's so important for the NWA to continue with the education grants for the students. It's not just for the teachers, it's for the students. It goes right to them. And especially now that we've got these STEM programs growing all across the country, it's just more important than ever to keep them going. And I think, and that's the reason why, and the teachers in Birmingham were just totally incredible. It was a really amazing time down there. And I know Jim will remember that, James will remember that too, because James was one of our speakers at that session as well. And it was right after the big tornadoes down there in Tuscaloosa. And we had our tornado in Massachusetts then too, that same year in 2011. So we were one of the big four. And I was on that day. I remember, never lived that one down. Anyway, but it was just working with the teachers all the years I've been up in Boston, as well as when I was up in Maine and down in South Carolina. I ran AMS, the Project Atmosphere program down in Charleston and Savannah. So when I was my 3 years down there. So, I mean, I've just been very much into education. If I wasn't a meteorologist, I'd be a math teacher someplace right now. So, I mean, so it's like marrying both things that I love to do. And I've had a lot of support from my management teams that I worked with. So
Eleanor, that big event in Birmingham with the teachers, they were certainly there to get the credit and to further their education, but a lot of them were there to see Jim Cantori.
And also Nick Walker. I mean, the weather dude, my goodness. I mean, it was like, the last time we were in Norfolk, he was singing and everything. We were bothering the meetings next door, and we got, hey, tone it down, people.
Yeah, we're gonna bring you back for the Weather Fest in Norfolk too. So the weather dude will be back. Eleanor, it's so awesome to see you. So awesome to finally get you on the show. And next big blizzard that comes through Eastern Massachusetts, we're gonna call you. And
as I like to say, you know the old saying, when hell freezes over? Well, hell froze over, and you saw the New England last winter. It was insanely cold and snowy and awful.
According to Chuck, the folks in hell needed a glass of ice water. So I guess it was.
Well, here, just to give you an idea, I do the climate at our office in Taunton, and the average low temperature for February of 2015 was 4.5 degrees. The average low. How much snow did you get? 103 inches. 103.
How many Eleanors is that?
Over 20? Around 20. Around 20. I think about it.
It's a lot of
no,
Eleanors.
not 20. No, I'm not. I'm 5'6". So. No, not quite. But it was. I'm 5. Yeah, no, to me. That's right. What am I thinking? I'm doing. Yeah, I was.
And you wanted to be a math teacher, right, Eleanor? Okay.
Skills. That was my second choice. Yeah.
Good job. Good choice that it's your second choice. Just kidding. So thank you, Eleanor. It's so awesome to see you. Now, the man who led the NWA over many, many years and just retired 2 years ago is here this year. He didn't even come to Salt Lake City. He's busy playing golf. But Steve Harned is the retired ex-director of the NWA, and he led it for many, many years and made it into the organization that it is today that he turned over to Janice. So welcome to the show again, Steve.
Thank you so much, Bill. And, notice how I'm dressed here, and I don't have a stress on my face. I don't have to worry about, is the room cool enough? Is the food out on time? That's executive director work at the annual meetings.
And just remember, Steve, if you tell any stories about me, I have some on you.
Well, in fact, that you open the door. Okay. Can you? Camera.
Mike is hot here.
Is Brian on the? You have Brian. Get Brian in here.
Turn him red, Steve.
Brian, no, it's a story on me. Brian and I were classmates at Florida State.
Go Noles.
Go Noles. 1966 to 1970. We went to every class together, and the story I have, I know it's a lot. We're old. Brian was a much better student than I was. Well, let's think about it. You get the weekend, right? Friday night, that's date night. Saturday, you got ball games. You got to run around. And then about Sunday, about 1 o'clock, you had the NFL early game, right?
Right.
Well, it's 12 o'clock Central Time. So about 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, I said, oh, God, I got all this work I got to do, and I haven't done it. And I knew Brian had been in the library all weekend working.
So I didn't have a life then.
So I'd go to the library at
Yeah,
FSU.
I do WeatherBrains.
Find Brian and say, Brian, you got to help me with this. And he'd make me grovel. He'd say,
would.
well, you haven't done your work. You should be a better student. And I was, but he would always help me out. So,
Of course.
but all of you college students, guys, see what's going to happen to you in 40 years. So anyway,
Better than the alternative.
that's better than the
You say you guys just, you walked to class together, you went to every class together, and I just have this vision of the two of you holding hands and skipping down the sidewalk.
Too much.
way too much. We attended the same classes.
Yes.
Period.
Yes. Well, and we stayed in the math meteorology building because you got one course shy of a math major to get your degree in meteorology.
Yeah. And you had the laboratory on the observatory on top of the floor, and
But
all the
not like their lab.
Oh, of course not. I mean, OU is unsurpassed, right?
I know.
Fantastic. So,
I have something to ask you. Do you remember when Dr. LeSueur set the maps on fire?
Oh, yeah, that's like all these maps are fax maps.
Yeah.
Do y'all know what a fax map
Yeah,
is?
they're very dry. Anybody
Very
here
dry.
know what a fax map is?
It's like
Oh,
dry
yeah,
paper.
there's like 6 hands go up.
So one of the professors, Dr. Noah LeSueur, is a huge name in meteorology.
Yes.
He smoked.
Augmented reality.
He smoked.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Brian. And say,
And he'd do the discussion, and he would stand next to the maps, and he would hold the cigarette behind him. And so he got a little too close, and he set the maps on fire. But he was very cool, you know. He put it out and continued with the map briefing. So much for memory lane.
That's right.
Now, there was a better story than that story, Steve. It involved a plane inlaid in a near court martial. What was that story about?
That was Bill Reed.
Oh, okay. Since Bill's not here at the conference, can we talk about him? All right.
That's right. Does everyone know who Bill Reed is, or ex-director of the Hurricane Center? Well, in the early 1970s, he and I were junior weather officers in the Navy. I was stationed in Spain, and he was in the Navy Hurricane Hunters. Navy had Hurricane Hunters then, and every spring they would take a boondoggle training trip to Europe. Yeah, right. And they'd end up in Spain. So he and I were same age. We'd go around running the alleys, and I'd show him all the best bodegas in southern Spain. So he had a 3:00 flight out. P3 was going to leave at 3 to go to Dakar, South Africa, then across back to Jacksonville. And there was a party at my apartment. I said, Bill, we'll go to the party, and then I'll take you to the plane. Well, he kept saying, I got to get to the plane. I said, well, I'll get you there. And finally, it got to like 2:30 in the morning. I said, oh, my God. And I can't, to this day, I don't remember why he was hanging. It must have had to do with a girl. It had to be a girl involved or something. But anyway, so we go flying through Rota, Spain, the small town of southern Spain, onto the air base, onto the tarmac, up to the P3. Props were turning on the P3. Basically, they're pulling the ladder up. Basically, I take Bill Reed, shove him up into the P3. They close the door, and they're off. Well, I saw him again. I didn't see him again for about 3 years. And he said, you almost got me court-martialed, and you too. So what do you mean? If I'd missed that flight, I would have been court-martialed, because missing movement in the military and the Navy is bad news. So he said, so I almost got Bill Reed and myself court-martialed over a party, probably chasing some girl. But so that's that story.
Yeah, women will get you in trouble. So Steve, they were flying reconnaissance flights then, and just weather reconnaissance flights. When did that process stop officially?
The Navy got out of the hurricane reconnaissance business in '75. Was the powers that be said, we don't need Air Force, and Air Force and Navy doing the same thing. So the Navy, so it was almost at the end of that period.
So can anybody in the audience tell me what is missing about this man? Anybody here? Something is different about him from 2 years ago. Eleanor's got it. Bruce says hair. Glasses, that's right. Now tell us that sounds like I'm waiting to get cataracts so I can get 20/20 vision now, Steve.
It works. I'm 67 years old. I started wearing glasses so is Brian.
Just barely.
We're both on Social Security, Medicare.
Skipping on the sidewalk.
All right, Nate. I live in Nate. That's right. I live in his market. We'll make things miserable here. So about 3 or 4 years ago, my eye doctor said, you got cataracts coming. You need to have surgery. Nobody's going to cut on my eye. That's ridiculous. I'm too young for that. So anyway, last summer 14, I need new glasses. So I went back to the eye doctor, and she said, can't help you. You got to get cataract surgery. All right, geez, okay. So it was summertime. Well, I waited till January to have them done because I wasn't going to let it cut into my golf game. I had to play golf, right? Priorities being what they are. So I waited till the middle of winter and had this. I want to stay away from this term miracle of science, but had cataract surgery in both eyes. So they take your lens out, your natural lens, pop in an artificial one. I don't wear glasses anymore. I have 20/20 vision. And the colors I can see are so vibrant. Anyway, that's an old person story. Another thing you'll face in 40 years, but it did. It did, because everything I was seeing was yellow green. And before I had the surgery, I hit a golf ball and disappear into green. Now I can find the lost ball. They look to me to find the lost balls. It's really, and it's helped my game. Yeah.
Well, Steve, it's an honor to have you here tonight, and thank you for being with us. Thank you for all your service. It was great for me as a, sort of a fledgling member of the NWA to get involved, and under your leadership, we had this don't ask, don't tell policy at Birmingham. We knew when to ask permission and we knew when to beg for forgiveness on that conference, but you kept us out of trouble with the council, and we appreciate that.
So before you go, Steve, I got to mention this. You have a fairly new home. You've moved recently to a golf course in North Carolina, so you have a 2-car garage. And what's in that 2-car garage? Subaru and a golf. There you go. That's what we aspire to. Thanks, Steve.
Hey, the Zoo Crew guys. So I asked Chuck if he plays golf. Yeah. And his response was?
Shit. Mark Twain said it really well. It's a good walk gone bad.
Oh, wow. You just lost the North Carolina demographic for this show.
Well, to me, it never made sense. If I wanted to keep the ball close to me, why am I hitting it away from me all the time? You go out and you search like hell to find it. What do? You hit it away again. Just put the ball in your pocket and walk away. Yeah, it's obvious I don't understand. I never understood the fascination. I understand it's a game of skill. And from everything I've been able to see, the people who play it end up getting so frustrated because they're not very damn skillful. They end up breaking their golf clubs and throwing them in the water and everything else. Who needs the aggravation?
Chuck, I love your perspective on life. Amazing. Our next guest with us this evening is Wendy Abshire. Wendy is the Senior Project Manager, am I right?
Program, project,
Sorry, whatever. At Comet, and also a former counselor, right, with the NWA. And we welcome you to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on WeatherBrains. Hi, everybody out there.
Hey, Wendy.
Manages the program, of course.
Which program?
Excuse me.
The senior program.
I'm among the management team that helps make the Comet program run. And a lot of people don't know who Comet is. We're a part of UCAR, but what they do know is our MedEd website. Anybody that's got a thirst for learning more about meteorology, hydrology, and climate science can go take free lessons on our website. And our program is here at this NWA meeting celebrating our 25th anniversary as a program. So we're here to be celebrating with the NWA on their 40th.
So Wendy, talk for a moment about how many people are registered users of Comet. And I was amazed when you told me today that you get 5,000. Is that right? New users per month.
That's correct.
I'm one of those users.
Yeah, you know, when we launched this little website, we figured it would be just the vehicle for training professional meteorologists, continuing education, and that it would be a few thousand people, maybe several thousands, maybe 10. And we had a big party when we hit our first 100,000 users, and now we just broke 400,000 registered users. Yeah. So I don't know what we're going to do when we hit 500,000. I would start planning that one now. But you know, as educators, we're really pleased the greater our reach is, because that means more people are getting the education and satisfying their thirst for knowledge. So that's great. We don't really advertise, but mostly through students and faculties at universities around the world, we grow by 3,000 to 5,000 users a month. The latest statistics I saw are that over 50,000 return regularly every year, and those 50,000 people are doing an average of 5.7 hours of training each. So we are serving up a lot of education and training in science.
An idea. Invite WeatherBrains to come out there for your 500,000.
I like it. Let's make it happen.
Now, Wendy, you've got a little story about Dr. Fujita that we all, of course, adore and revere Dr. Fujita. So why don't you tell that story?
Absolutely. So I was saying that you guys were reminiscing about your old days back in school. So I was really fortunate to start working as a student assistant at NCAR when I was 19. And I got to support lots of field projects back then. And one of them was MIST, which was down in northern Alabama. I lived in Huntsville for several months, and we were there to study wet microbursts specifically. And Dr. Fujita came down to participate in part of the experiment. And I had been working at NCAR in our radar science group, and he wanted to review the data from the previous day's wet microburst that we captured right in the middle of our meso network. And my boss, Jim Wilson of NCAR, assigned me to work all night long alone with Dr. Fujita, myself, and the radar technician. Spent 12 hours literally overnight from like 10 p.m. till the next morning reviewing the data. And I got to sit there and visit with him while he analyzed the data live on the spot, because he could not wait. His thirst and passion, as he was a man in his 70s or 80s at that time, to review the data and discover more about wet microbursts. He couldn't wait. He was not going to wait until that data came back, you know, to the lab, and several months later. He needed to see it that night. And so we got to sit there and work together, and he treated me just like a fellow scientist, and it was really an awesome experience. Delightful, charming man, gracious, humble,
Absolutely.
And such an impact on our field.
I met him when I was working in the regional office in Fort Worth, and I asked him a question about how did he learn so much? And he said he still didn't know everything. And I said, well, do you just say, I don't know? He says, no, I don't do that. He says, I say, is mystery.
You know, he named so many of the things that terms we commonly use, bow echo, all kinds of terminology that we use. But he also tried lots of exotic things that we didn't adopt, like the anteater echo. How many people have ever heard of the anteater echo? Yeah, that one didn't take. But he, you know, it's been a long time since I thought about it. I think it was through
Chuck says he knows, Bill.
Oh, Chuck, tell us about the anteater.
It was a radar cross-section through a narrow precipitation shaft that was descending from an anvil.
Right, I thought it was a vertical cross-section, and I'll be darned, it did look like an anteater.
It looked like an anteater.
It really did.
No question about it.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Narrowed down to a nose kind of looking thing. It was, well, there wasn't any. That's why it never got
That's why I didn't
adopted.
take. No. Those vertical cross sections with radar just don't get used as much as they should. Otherwise,
Amen.
we might be calling lots of things anteater echoes.
Well, Wendy, it's an honor to have you here tonight, and thank you for everything you do. Everyone who's ever taken a COMET class owes each and every one of your associates a big thank you. So thank you for being with us tonight. While you're in the mood for clapping, everyone give a big hand for Bruce Thomas, who is giving us our guest tonight. And next, we want to welcome Dr. John Knox, who is a professor at the University of Georgia And John and I had lunch today, and of course, John is always at the forefront of things over there. Most recently, he saved the UAB football team.
Not single-handed. I had a little help by a guy named Span over there. but no, I'm a UAB graduate, and one of my little larks was to try to make sure that people understood what an important university that is for the state of Alabama and for the nation.
John, you did some interesting research after the April 27, 2011 tornadoes about the debris trajectories from the tornadoes that struck across the southeastern United States. Have you closed that research, or are you still working on it?
Well, that was pretty much a contained piece of research. What we did was we took data from a Facebook page created by Patty Bullion of up near Harvest, Alabama, where she took debris that she found and then that people she knew and didn't know found, scanned it, put it on Facebook, and then let the social media, basically, the network, the dense networks of social media, convey information saying, oh, wait, that looks like a picture of somebody in a church in Phil Campbell, Alabama. And then somebody say, oh, well, that looks like somebody's aunt in Phil Campbell. And then somebody say, that's my aunt. And then it was such that you could, within a day or two, take an image and return it to its owner, basically, from hundreds of miles away in some cases. So what we did at the University of Georgia was we simply took the information from the Facebook page, quality controlled it, and then used the starting and ending points as trajectories. And from that, we got information that I think is very consistent with what we're seeing from dual pole radar, which had not been implemented in Alabama on that fateful day in 2011. It was real close, but not quite.
So, John, anything you're working on right now, research-wise, that's interesting to the group?
I think so. At Georgia, we're working on a variety of things having to do with atmospheric hazards, especially those that don't always make the severe criterion. We had a seminar that we did this past spring on non-convective winds, or winds that are not quite convective, such as wake lows, and how they can cause a lot of damage and even deaths at levels that are really not at high wind warning levels and so forth, or severe thunderstorm warnings. And so we've been looking at that, but in a perspective that includes the trees, because a lot of the damage that you get from these events has to do with tree limbs falling or entire trees falling. But as far as we can tell, nobody really ever looks at it from the perspective of a forester. And so we had a seminar where we brought in the foresters from the Warnell School at UGA, one of the top forestry schools in the Southeast, and really looked at a case of a wake low that hit Athens, right where we were. It dropped a tree in my driveway, and I was trapped for a whole day. And it also dropped a tree on a car and killed a man. So anyway, we've been doing research. We have several posters here that are related to wake lows, and also more generally, another poster we have by Paul Miller, who's a PhD student at Georgia, and others, on the idea that people overestimate wind speeds, because that's kind of a well-known thing, that when people try to estimate winds, they overestimate it, but probably nobody on this panel can say by how much, correct? Okay, we've got the answer. Come to the poster, basically.
Talk to us about bounce houses.
Okay, sure. So
who doesn't love a good bounce house?
Right, everybody. How many people in this room have been on a bounce house? Yeah, all right. We love our bounce houses, but they're very dangerous. A study in the journal Pediatrics in 2012 showed that injuries had gone up by a factor of 15 in bounce houses. Now, most of those are on nice sunny days, and people are bouncing around. They just run into each other and they hit themselves in the head or break an arm or something like that. But there's a subset of those injuries that are caused by weather, because you got a bounce house out and the wind blows and the 50-pound sandbags aren't enough, and those suckers go flying. And when they go flying, it makes the news. One happened in May in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that was the lead story in the Fort Lauderdale media area because it was so dramatic and you had footage of it. So that's kind of those are the ones that get the attention, not when somebody just falls and breaks an arm in a bounce house. So what we did this past summer was have a research seminar with undergrads and grads at the University of Georgia, where we looked at both the meteorological phenomena that can lead to bounce house weather-related accidents, and also the policy side, because are these things regulated? If so, how? And how can that be improved? So
nanny, you're just basically trying to create a nanny state to kill all our fun. Is that it?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is we looked at the policies in the state of Georgia, and to create the nanny state for bounce houses would require the change of one word in the Georgia code. So basically, it wouldn't take that much to make people safer. And again,
so you're bragging that you can do this easily. Is that it?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
right,
good.
exactly. So anyway, that's what we're doing at Georgia. A lot of things that are at the boundaries. What Chuck wants basically is to look at atmospheric science and social science without turning it all over to the sociologists. At Georgia, we're training people at the undergraduate level to integrate the two ideas. So I think that's where academia has a big role to play, because the things that we need meteorologists to know today, a lot of that is in those boring gen ed courses, that terrible liberal arts education that so many meteorologists seem to hate. And so what we're trying to do is to integrate that in a positive way so that we have future meteorologists that are coming out that are already familiar with Tversky and Kahneman, as we have students coming right out of our program. They have backgrounds in psychology. One of our faculty members has a PhD in psychology.
John, I wanted to comment on some research you've been involved in dealing with the reality of those students that want to seek the profession of meteorology as their career. You published a paper in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society in the last 10 years. I'd like you to comment on your findings that you published there, and also, has there been a follow-up work on that?
I figured John would go after me on this one. In 2008, I became famous and infamous in certain circles for publishing a paper that asked the question, is there too much of a good thing in terms of meteorology students in the United States? And at that time, I said if trends continued, we would have a glut. And I was very careful to say that. And what happened right after that paper was published were two things: the trend in the increase in number of undergrads in meteorology continued, and the Great Recession hit. And so anybody that got a degree between about 2007 and 2010 knows about this. I'm seeing some heads nod. It was a tough time to get a job. If you do the stats in terms of supply and demand, number of undergrad BS recipients in meteorology, and the number of jobs according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's usually the best estimate we've got, there was a mismatch from the 90s into about the mid to late 2000s. But the good news is that if you do the numbers now a little bit later, from maybe the mid 2000s to now, there's less of a mismatch. It's probably pretty close to equal numbers in terms of supply and demand. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are more jobs now in meteorology than there had been. The problem is what's sometimes called the pig and the python, namely that students that got their degrees in the mid 2000s to late 2000s, some of them are still trying to get work in meteorology, and that's the reason why you look at some of the numbers, or you can talk to some of the people at Peachtree City, the Weather Service, who've crunched these numbers. You advertise a position in the Weather Service and you get about 1,000 applicants, and you have a panel, kind of the finalists is about 150 or so. So those numbers, it's going to take a while for those numbers to shrink, because there's still people that got degrees, now it's several years out, but they're still trying to get a job in meteorology. And so it's fair for them to keep applying. We don't want to run them off, but it means that there are two things that are going on. If you look at the numbers on short term, it's kind of a match between supply and demand, but you still have people that are trying to get jobs. The other thing that I made a point of, and I want to emphasize, is that supply and demand in our field are uncoupled. We can drive the supply up by making, we could have a great podcast, right, and get a lot of people interested in meteorology, but that doesn't magically mean that the National Science Foundation funds more researchers to have more RA positions at the graduate level so that people can get master's degrees and then get jobs in the Weather Service. So supply and demand really don't talk to each other very well in our field. So right now,
as it turns out, meteorologists don't do that very well either. So
right,
it's okay.
Exactly.
Well, I actually have a question toward that. What would you like to see? What are your suggestions to increase the flow of information from people doing work like yours, especially to the broadcast sector?
Okay, well, the problem is that, and I think James would certainly have opinions on this, that the broadcast med, of course, is changing like crazy. And we're not really sure what that's going to look like in the future. Because y'all, younger people here, how many of you watch TV weather? You know, a local TV meteorologist. Okay. Yeah. How about the rest? How about your friends that aren't meteorologists? You have to tell them what TV is, right?
They get it. They get it on their crap app. We all know that.
Right.
We've lost it. The only time
exactly.
they come to us is when there's tornadoes flying, and that's it.
I know.
And so
things
we got a problem. Our business model is dying.
Yeah. And that's why we need to increase that flow of information from you and especially people like Laura Myers so that we can say, okay, what is going to grab that attention?
Yeah, I think having people like James come over and speak at the University of Georgia, I think our students heard the message that if you're going to be in broadcast meteorology, it's not going to be in front of a green screen. It's not going to be the old days. And so I think there's better information. One of the reasons I wrote my article back in 2008 was to make sure that there was some transmission of information, because I would have students come to me and say, "What's the job situation?" I'm like, "Well, I'm hearing a few stories, but it's all anecdotes." So I tried to write a data-based article. Now the problem with that is it's harder to get the data now than it was 10 years ago, because the universities, and y'all at OU can help here, the universities don't supply the data to the American Meteorological Society or anybody else in terms of their number of graduates and all the other stuff that existed back in the old days of the curricula, the AMS UCAR curricula book. Remember, it was a book. Okay, well, that went web and then it died, because the AMS says that they can't get data from the universities. So we're basically flying blind. That's why I say it's really uncoupled, because if you're a student, you have a hard time getting information other than going to the websites of the universities. And quite frankly, speaking as somebody that knows universities pretty well, we're not going to put up a website that says all of our alums are unemployed sitting in our underwear doing nothing. Not that that's true, but there's no independent source of information like there was even in the 1980s when we would have books about colleges and so forth. So that's part of the problem. We need more information. We need it disseminated.
It's not really in the university's interest to make that information public.
Hell no.
So, that's not hard to understand. Universities have become essentially businesses.
Yes.
They aren't really educational institutions anymore. And the whole object is to put butts in the seats and collect their tuition money. So you don't want to fail anybody. You don't want to offer a challenging curriculum. You don't want to have teachers on your staff who are tough teachers. You want to crank out the graduates and keep the money flowing. Plus, of course, that there's this big emphasis on research, and research professors often are really poor teachers. Not universally. That there are exceptions to that rule, but one of the things that a friend of mine has made me aware of, universities are really trading on the American myth that if you educate yourself and work hard and get good grades and do all that stuff, then a job paradise is awaiting you. And the fact is that you're really fortunate if the circumstances allow you the opportunity to practice what you educated yourself for. I tell students that it's a really smart idea to work very hard to learn computer programming.
Yes.
Because that's a much more, people are in demand in that even today. And so it's a nice fallback position. If you can't get a job in meteorology, you can still have an interesting, intellectually challenging job that'll pay you probably better than what most meteorologists offer.
This is true.
So in general, I think students are wise to be a little cautious about how they plan their careers. The job scene in meteorology is changing a lot. There are many more private sector jobs now, and there's fewer and fewer federal positions. And I'm going to make the bold statement that public weather forecasting is going to be totally automated at some point, not too far down the road.
How many years?
A few decades. I think for a long time it's going to be like the engineers on a diesel locomotive, They still had engineers or firemen. The union actually forced the trains to keep firemen employed until they all retired. But eventually, I think the public sector forecasting is going to be dominated by automation. So there's going to be fewer and fewer jobs there as well. It's a tough job market right now. I know an awful lot of really smart, very hardworking young people who have been unable to get jobs. And it's not for lack of talent or lack of effort. So the dream really has become a myth, unfortunately. And of course, the university depends on that, the pervasiveness of that myth.
Yeah. Well,
if there wasn't for that, then they'd be out of business.
Well, I'd like to rephrase that. I don't think it's completely a myth. What I've said before is that there will still be a lot of success stories. There'll just be a lower percentage of success stories than back in the day. In Chuck's
tell
day,
that to the
or even my
people
day.
who are in the percentage that don't get those positions.
I have actually.
Yeah.
I wrote my paper because of students that had not gotten jobs.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of good outcomes. I mean, that's the thing. You'll have success stories within our field. and
Even a
sometimes you'll
blind
have
chicken
success
gets a
stories
kernel
outside.
of corn now and then. Sorry, I had to throw that one in. It's one of my favorites.
All hat, no cattle. Yeah.
John, I want to thank you for coming up here and being a part of the program. This is some very important information, and here at OU, I think students need to hear this. Even at OU, they need to hear the reality. So thanks for joining us.
While we're queuing up the next guest, I wanted to mention you talked about computer science. I double majored in meteorology and computer science, and I remember going to the picnic, the graduation picnic for the computer science department, and they were going around the table, and everyone's like, "Oh, who are you going to work for?" And this is pre-dot-com bubble, and so I'm going to work for Microsoft and Amazon and da 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 da. And then they come to me and I was like, I'm going to work for a small TV station in West Texas. And they're like, oh, that's great, da 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 da. And then I find out that these guys are leaving, getting jobs at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in 2000. And I'm getting my first job in TV for $18,500 a year. I had to pay to move my own butt out there, and I loved it because that's what I was going to do. And I tell my students now, you've got to be on fire for this. Especially if you're going to do the broadcasting thing, you've got to be on fire for it, because that can be the differentiating factor in getting a job and not. And in some lines of work, especially the broadcast industry, you are the industry will chew you up and spit you out if you are not on fire for it. The long hours, low pay, the whole bit. So if it's a gut check the fire, make sure it's there, stoke it whenever you can. Otherwise, it's going to be a long road.
I'm going to say, if you don't have that fire, you might as well quit now. That kind of passion is just an absolute necessity in our business, and especially today. And if you have some illusion that you're somehow going to get rich in meteorology, you better think that one over pretty carefully. The only way to get rich in meteorology is to give up your ethics. You get involved in, say, weather modification. But that...
Shots fired.
But seriously, the prospects of that are so small, and I don't think any of us got into meteorology because we were so excited about the income. If they wanted to throw more money at me, that was fine, but I felt like I was stealing when I took the money they did offer. I did cash the checks, but yes.
Reminds me of the old adage about, how do you make a small fortune in aviation? Start with a big fortune.
Yeah, right. But if you have that passion, all that stuff doesn't matter. There are so many people, and I've talked to a lot of people who are not involved in some technical field, and most of them hate their jobs. Many of your parents probably hated their jobs. And if you have an opportunity to pursue your dream and live your dream, even if it's not for a very big salary, I don't think many real passionate people would refuse that.
If your passion is your career, if you find a way to turn your passion into your career, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah. They pay you to play. And that's one of the primary reasons why I tell students that it's your primary obligation as a student to take ownership of the education process. How many of you out there are students? Okay, a bunch. How many of you have at one point or another in your academic career had a bad teacher? Okay, so you're still students. Okay, well, the deal is not only have you had them in the past, you may have them now, and I can guarantee you you're going to have them in the future. If you take ownership of your education, what that means is you can't use the excuse, oh, well, I got a bad teacher, I'm not going to learn this. You learn it on your own somehow. And I'll tell you that as a professional, the learning process does not stop when you get your diploma. The learning process continues, but at that point, you control it. So a bad teacher who forces you to learn the material on your own is actually giving you job training, because that's what you're going to be doing when you leave. A bad teacher can be your best friend, but you have to respond to it a certain way.
Well, Chuck, we're going to go directly to that source. We're going to speak with two students right now. We have with us Lynette Grant and Elise Smith, both students at Valparaiso University. Welcome, and please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Lynette Grant. I am a senior at Valparaiso University. I want to go into broadcasting, and I'm actually the weather director of our on-campus TV station. So, yeah, that's pretty much easy thing about me. Your turn. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elise Smith. I am a junior at Valparaiso University, and I also want to go into broadcasting. I am currently the vice president of the Northwest Indiana chapter of the American Meteorological Society and National Weather Association. And this year, we are the local chapter of the year for NWA.
So I must ask first, how do you respond to some of the rhetoric that you've been hearing here tonight?
It's not rhetoric, John. It's the gospel.
Truth does hurt, but I am driven by hope and hope for the future. I did the speed mentoring yesterday, which was unbelievable, just to hear how many diverse jobs there are in meteorology, and how if one thing doesn't work out, another door could open for you. And even though I do want to go into broadcasting, I'm willing to travel. I'm willing to find a job that will fit what I want to do and something that I'm very passionate for. So I take everything with a grain of salt, but I'm going to work my hardest and try and be the best person I can be.
Do both of you think that the traditional television news model, which is I assume what you were talking about, how long do you think that will last through your career?
There's something about watching the news that people want to have somebody tell them the weather. I mean, yeah, it's simple. You can pull it up on your phones, but the weather is the reason that most people watch the news. I learned this at my internships, that statistics show that people watch the news, and then as soon as weather's done, the viewership drops. Sorry, sports people, but it just so happens to be like that. And there's something about having somebody telling you the forecast and showing you this is why it's going to happen, and what are the temperatures going to do, or when's it going to rain, or is little Johnny going to be safe getting off the bus tomorrow? Something like that is just something that I don't think it's going to go away for a while, despite how much different media outlets have grown. I think that's going to stick around for a long time.
So you think it'll last through a career of 40 years?
Oh, definitely. If I go in the career for that long.
I was talking to somebody who's in a large market last night, and he told me that one of the ratings parameters is called HUT, households using television. He was referring to this summer in a very large market as opposed to last summer. And he said the households using television this past summer were half the amount of the previous summer. They lost half of the audience from the previous summer. What does that make you think?
You're trying to make her feel bad.
I am not. I'm trying.
Yeah. Come on. I graduate and
I'm trying to say it before Chuck does.
Dang, you're not gonna. any hope
Morning
for the
Zoo
future,
in
are you?
PR.
No, but I will recognize that it has happened, and we know with the way that the media has grown and stuff, and new outlets are coming out like that. But I do think it is scary, but at the same time, I'm not too worried. I know I don't want to sound stuck up, but I know we're both talented. We can do it, and I believe in the both of us. We can, and as well as other students.
Please prove him wrong.
He is the accelerant for a reason. Chuck, you want to say something?
Well, I would comment that, while I'm a big fan of positive self-image, that's a very important part of the whole process that students have to go through. But unfortunately, you're confronting a tidal wave of forces that don't give a damn about how you feel about yourself. And, it's the same way with the Weather Service and what's likely to happen to most of the people who now have forecaster positions. I think anyone who believes that there's going to be a public sector forecaster actually issuing forecasts 40 years from now, I think that's living in a dream world. And, that's great if you're confident that you're going to be able to do it, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's almost certainly going to be a dream world.
Let me shed a more positive light on this conversation.
Hey, it's neither negative or positive. It's confronting reality.
Well, I think we tried to shed that with John's discussion earlier. Elise, I wanted to ask you about your chapter. Being recognized as Chapter of the Year is a great recognition. Maybe you could talk about what you're doing at Valparaiso that the NWA recognized with this award.
Yeah, so last year we really stepped it up because for years and years with both the American Meteorological Society Chapter of the Year and NWA, we've gotten honorable mentions, and you're an honorary chapter, but someone else beat you out. So at Valpo, we really strive to be a well-rounded organization, both academically and giving back to our community. Every year we have Team Twister for Relay for Life at Valpo, which started with one of the undergrads back in 2009 whose mom passed away of cancer. And so every year, the whole department, the alumni, we reach out to become a community at Valpo in the meteorology department and raise money for that. We also host the Great Lakes Meteorology Conference. This year it's April 2nd. And that is completely student run. We find our own speakers, we find our own space. Usually we get about 100 attendees from across the Midwest. Last year, our keynote speaker was Ken Carey. So he also helped push us to apply for NWA local chapter this year. And with his recommendation, I really think he helped us reach that extra step to finally win it.
What would both of you like to see from television stations that you don't see now, both on the TV product and in the digital space?
Did you hear my talk earlier yesterday or my poster today?
Sorry.
Continuity across all stations with the colors used for weather alerts. Plain and simple.
Okay. Anything else?
From me.
What are you not being served with that you want? From an app, from the TV product? And if nothing, that's fine.
Well, for me, I have noticed as a student that it has been very hard for me to find an internship recently. I don't know if it's because there are stricter rules about finding internships or not, which is, also kind of goes with what Chuck was saying about the reality. It's hard. You have to want it. So from a student standpoint, I would like for stations to reach out a little more. But then again, that's, up to me to really go out, reach out, be a very proactive student and show them that, you really want it. So that's something that I would like to see as a student.
I want to thank both of you for joining us this evening. And I hope that the experience that you're gaining right now will carry you through your career. Thank you, Elise. And thank you, Lynette.
Nobody likes an organized show, so this is how we do it at WeatherBrains. But thank you guys for being here. We appreciate you, and good luck with your careers. So, all right, and here's Bruce Thomas. He's taking pictures and taking names.
I am bringing on a success story from the University of Oklahoma to follow. Now, he's been out of school a few years, but we're going to talk about some positive success stories for people that have gone through weather programs. All right?
Thank you, Bruce Thomas. Thank you very much. I wanted to bring the man with the coolest Twitter handle in weather. I think I would argue, Dual Paul, the Deputy Chief of Staff, National Weather Service, and the Vice President of the National Weather Association. It's great to have you back on the show, Paul.
Yeah, happy to be here. I had a great time on the previous time I was on, and it's great being at the National Weather Association 40th anniversary, being in Oklahoma. I love it. My passion is for the National Weather Association and operational meteorology. And we got a great thing going here with record-breaking attendance. It's just looking forward to the rest of the good week.
So Paul, talk for a second about the McKinsey report as much as you can. I hear a lot of excitement. I hear a lot of positivity about what's going on in the Weather Service. So can you share anything at this point? I know we don't have reports and findings and things, but tell us about the process and what was involved here and what's going to be next.
Yeah, well, I can start with the gloomy news, because start with gloomy news, go to the much better news. But part of the gloomy news was that something we had known for several years is that morale is down in the National Weather Service. We have a hard time filling vacancies. People are overworked, those types of things. So morale is down. We have a problem with innovation in the National Weather Service. We've kind of known that, but the results of the phase 1 of this study bore that out. On the other hand,
I have to stop you here.
Go ahead, Nate.
So we just had John Knox talking about the imbalance of supply and demand with labor.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, I forget who it was, it may have been Rick Smith, who was talking about an opening they had in their office, and they had 150 applicants for one opening. And that's just the glut that got to them, not the total number of people. How are we having a hard time filling vacancies? That blows my mind.
The challenges reside in the corporate services that the Weather Service uses to fill these vacancies. The backlog is incredible, and Chuck's chuckling because it's a bureaucratic process, takes way too long, and it's the federal government. Things are just taking way too long to fill these vacancies. Security checks are taking way too long to get done when people do get hired, and that's a totally separate agency. So two different agencies that the National Weather Service doesn't have control over, filling those vacancies. We had the hiring freeze. You guys remember all of that. Once that was lifted, they got hammered with all of NOAA got hammered with trying to fill vacancies all at the same time. There's just a massive backlog. It's going to take a while to clear it up.
So it's not a lack of applicants that is creating the difficulty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just we cannot fill them fast enough. So that was the gloomy news part of it. The morale is down. Innovation, they feel like they're not getting their ideas translated up the chain. It's a bureaucracy. That happens. The good news came from, and it's not going to be a surprise to people in this group, came from our core customers, emergency management. They love the National Weather Service. And Chuck talked about a little bit, right? They always want more. And so part of the study is going to figure out what we can give them without, impinging on the private sector, because we also have to drive, create jobs in the private sector as well. But it was nice to hear validation from the study of how important the National Weather Service is to saving lives through the emergency management community.
Why is morale down?
People are working a lot of overtime because they have empty seats next to them in the chair because we can't fill vacancies. They feel like their innovative ideas aren't being pushed up the chain, which that's true. We got a communications problem. They feel like they like the mission and vision, obviously, because that's a passionate thing for everybody that works in the Weather Service.
The Weather Service is fundamentally has been a top-down driven organization for all the time that I've known about it. So that challenge of getting ideas up has always been with us, unfortunately.
But we are working on that. We have new tools in place called the virtualization lab that all offices have access to, and it allows them to build their ideas or input an idea it should be a good one, and they can work it out so that they can develop it on the platform, whether it's a modeling platform or an AWIPS application, which is the software that all the forecasters use. It's transitioned to operations a little bit quicker. Still got a ways to go, though. Absolutely.
I got a quick question I'd want to ask Paul on that. It seems to me there's a bit of a conflict within the system. If you want local offices to do innovative sorts of development, isn't that sort of inconsistent with the notion that all the software systems in every office are supposed to look the same?
No, because let's say, I mean, there are amazing people in every single office in the National Weather Service. Let's say they come up with a really good idea. In the past, they just applied it to their one office or maybe a neighboring office. If it's really good, we should have that same type of benefit translated to all 122 weather forecast offices across the U.S. That's the intent here. Not just having it apply to one single office or two offices, but if it's a really good idea that works outside of a regional climate area, why not get it to everybody else?
I can picture that being a very glacially slow process.
Well, we are the federal government. Things don't work too fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a big, massive battleship that we're trying to steer here. It takes time to turn.
So now, Paul, you said that morale is down, but now I've also heard from the survey that what amazed McKinsey was that dedication and loyalty to the organization was one of the highest numbers they had ever seen in organizations they studied.
Yeah, that's correct. They work with public sector, private sector agencies, and the scores for passion and dedication to the mission were as high as they've ever seen. Again, I'm not surprised because I am one of the people that knew I wanted to be a meteorologist when I was 8 years old. I knew I wanted to work in the National Weather Service when I was 8 years old. Never want to work anywhere else. The agency is filled with those people. And so what McKinsey, that's the company that's helping us with this analysis, they're going to help, and I'm not sure how yet, but they're going to help us tap into that passion because they have worked with companies that have similar levels of passion to and commitment to mission than what we have. Just they've never seen anything quite as amazing as what we have.
Why are we holding on to this idea that the Weather Service can't compete with commercial entities?
Holding on to why we can't compete with commercial. Yeah, I mean, we in certain areas. Yeah. Well, I mean, we create, by providing the foundational data sets that the National Weather Service provides to the private sector, that creates a lot of jobs in the private sector. And so we realize that's our primary role is foundational data sets that help create jobs.
I don't know all of the history of the legislation that may be involved, but I think a great deal of that is sort of mandated by the political process where the private sector people are lobbying very actively to keep the Weather Service out of various things. I actually, you might be surprising for people to realize that I'm a big supporter of the private sector. There are many tasks for which the private sector is ideally suited, and where the use of public sector meteorologists as competition would actually be both unfair and maybe not the right way to go about it. The trick is to find that balance, and where is that border? And right now it's sort of a political football, which is pretty much unfortunate.
Should the Weather Service be allowed a full app?
I'm not sure what that means.
Well, I mean, I would love us to be able to develop one single app that we can support, but that there's a whole funding issue there. The private sector already does it. They already do it really well with their weather apps. Granted, I would love to be able to do that and have a single app, but I mean, we'd have to find funding for it to keep it sustainable because it can't fail. If we do a weather app, it cannot fail when severe weather strikes.
Isn't the mission to meet people where they are?
Sure.
The users?
Yeah.
Well, literally, the mission statement doesn't say anything about that.
Well, now it's working.
I mean, if it's in the vein of public safety, absolutely. Yep. I mean, that's our swimming lane. That's the swimming lane of the National Weather Service is for public safety.
Isn't the Weather Service sort of doing that through, what's the name of the?
Wireless emergency alerts, WEA, yeah. So yeah, we've at least done that through a partnership with FEMA, where and I'm sure you get alerts out here all the time. The high impact weather warnings for sure, flash flood, tornado, not severe thunderstorms, are automatically pushed to your cell phone wherever you are. It'll ping the nearest tower and you'll get an alert, which is pretty nice. But it does just regurgitate the warning text from the National Weather Service and gives you a link.
So in one of the workshops leading up to the development of the storm-based warnings, we had a conversation about the difference between your private and public sector and the role for that. And it came to a head about weather radio and what's the role of weather radio in all of this. And the consensus of that particular group, and there were certainly folks that didn't agree with it, so maybe it wasn't a consensus, but the idea was that the weather services, they are the foundation, they're the baseline upon which the private sector can build and, like you said, create jobs. It's foundational data set. There is going to be forecasting as part of that foundational data set. There's warnings as part of that. And then it was the private sector's responsibility to grab onto that and to build from there in terms of creating jobs, providing, and sort of meeting people where they are. So it's maybe two different, and I'm not necessarily taking a side on this, but that was sort of the differentiation was, is the Weather Service a foundation, or is it to, go out and meet people where they are? Where do you find yourself on that?
I think it can be both, where, if we're trying to save lives and it's public safety is at risk, then absolutely we need to figure out a way to meet people where they are, whether that's using broadcast meteorology, emergency managements to get the word out. Any possible way to get the word out, including wireless emergency alerts. It's public safety. We're here to save lives. That's what we do.
Well, why was the Weather Service allowed to develop a fully functional website and not fully functional apps?
That is a good question. I'm not sure.
Who knows the answer to that question? Who knows the answer to that?
I honestly
Because I've asked it on the show a number of times and I've never heard a good answer. Some of you will remember I got some answers from some people that I didn't like, but I've not heard a legitimate answer from them.
The answers or the people?
Well, no, the answers. The answers. I don't know the people.
Because we've got a website. Yeah.
I would really like someone to answer that question.
Yeah.
But I can like the answers and still not like the answers and still like them.
Who has the answer to that question?
In the National Weather Service, I don't know. That was a long time. That was a while back when the internet was coming about. We just had a website, and I guess.
Well, I just feel. Everybody knows my position. I feel like there's some artificial restriction going on, and I would like somebody to account for that.
Well, again, it is a medium for public safety.
Let's form a congressional committee.
Yes.
I hope they're not listening, Chuck. We don't want that much oversight. I deal with that.
Well, Paul, thanks for being on the program this week. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Great insight. Always a fantastic guest and a great supporter of the National Weather Association.
By the way, I'd like to mention that Paul was the survivor of a course that I taught in grad school, so he deserves a lot of credit.
I feel
Our next guest this evening.
I feel compelled to ask, was he one of the students that had to go learn the material on his own?
You can draw whatever conclusions you wish, but I think Paul will testify that essentially in that class, everybody learned everything on their own.
Would you like to drop the mic now or later?
Nate,
you got a problem.
Yeah, Nate, you're going to be taken out behind the woodshed, I think.
I'm familiar.
Just call him the accelerant.
Our next guest on the program is Stephen Neslage. Thank you, Stephen. He is a senior coordinating producer at the Weather Channel, my former employer, sorry. That could be a slip, right?
Freudian.
Could be. Well, recently we had Dave Clark on the program, and it's great to have you with us. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges right now that are going on with the Weather Channel and some of the decisions that have been made with regards to your programming.
I think that's why you had David on, right? No, it's a changing market. I think he phrased it best when he said that we used to be a TV company with a data branch, and now we're a data company with a TV channel. So it actually kind of in a discussion you're having earlier, we feel like the demand for the information is at an all-time high. It's just the medium is changing. And we're trying to find creative ways to present that. One of our newest technologies that we're developing is trying to make interactive weather, to let people choose what they want to see and choose how they build their own forecasts. And they have certain interests, they go certain ways. And a lot of that we want to be interactive, like quite literally touching your screens and your pixels and moving your tablets around and having an interactive weather experience.
Does this mean I can create my own weather? Just move the pixels around and just draw some rain on the radar for me.
Yeah, we get a lot of calls about that.
Why does that not surprise me?
I don't know. I worked an overnight shift there for 2 years, and fielding the calls that don't get filtered through the front office is pretty terrible.
For those of you, by the way, looking to go into television, he's onto something. The people who call, especially when you interrupt programming, psychology majors ought to have to do a shift at a TV station, because and the kind of abuse you take. I mean, our receptionist, when we cut in we have a tornado heading straight toward downtown Raleigh, like that's never happened before, and people will call and say, why are you interrupting Young and the Restless, or why are you interrupting golf, or why? I mean, got an F5 tornado heading toward downtown, for crying out loud.
I can tell you my favorite
story
story about that. My first job was in Huntsville, Alabama, and that TV market is very wide east to west. And in the western side, there was a tornado warning, so they cut in, but they cut into the series, not the season, but the series finale of Walker, Texas Ranger. So someone calls from the eastern side and says, "There's blue sky, you better put Walker back on."
There's a Chuck Norris joke just waiting to be made here.
No, you just wait, because the man said, he literally said, "I'm gonna do something bad to you if Walker doesn't come back on." But they couldn't do it. So after the 11 p.m. broadcast, every car window in the parking lot had a bat taken to it, and he had come and shattered everybody's windows. And 2 weeks later, they had a 12-foot security fence around WHNT TV in Huntsville, Alabama, with barbed wire on top and security cameras.
Like Ron White says in his monologue, you can't fix stupid.
Yeah.
Another show title.
Yeah.
So
use that one,
Steve and I had a story like that when I was on the CBS affiliate in Birmingham. We signed off on Sunday nights at 1 a.m. and they did maintenance or whatever. But this Sunday night we stayed on for severe weather. So the only thing they could do was show Baywatch over and over and over. And I mean, after you've seen the same episode of Baywatch like 6 times, it's just, it's about all you can take. But this guy calls up at 3 a.m. in the morning and says, "You just cut into Baywatch." And I was like, "Just hang on 30 minutes, it'll be on again." And that was only surpassed by the guy who called up one night and said, "Quit cutting into the Tonight Show." And I'm like, this is the CBS affiliate guy. You got the wrong number, but So anyway, those are crazy times. Now I hear we might be able to marry our two shows. Now I hope this hasn't ruined it tonight for you, but we love Marshall. Marshall, Dr. John Knox introduced us to him, and Marshall's been a big part of our show, and we've applauded and loved what he's doing and what you guys are doing with Weather Geeks. So we hear there might be something in the works. He said it on the air one day, and we might get to do it. Is that still a possibility?
Yeah, we're talking about, actually was just working with Ben on some of the tech issues where you all are on a 25-second delay from when I speak these words to when they're seen at home. So that's a challenge we have to overcome, but I think we can figure out a way to do it. And we love Marshall too. He was the perfect fit for Weather Geeks. When we pitched Weather Geeks to the Weather Channel, we had 2 ultimatums. Number 1, we are going to choose our guests, and number 2, we're going to choose our topics. And that having Chuck on and having James on and having Joe Bastardi on 2 weeks ago really illustrates that we are dictating the conversations that we want to have, and we don't.
I really respect
We're
what
not
you guys
filtered.
are trying to do. That's why I participate in the show, because I want to support it. But the thing that I really love about it is the sort of freewheeling nature of what you're allowed to say and do on the show. There are basically, apart from common decency, there are some very few limits on what you can say and do. And so I think that's really one of the reasons it's been such a successful show. I think people appreciate a show that actually tells the truth about situations, doesn't sugarcoat it. So keep
Thank you.
keep
That's
it
a good
up, guys.
endorsement. And Chuck was our very first guest, and he came back for the 1 year anniversary. So we'll see you for the 2 year anniversary.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to be on the show with Lou, actually.
Now that'd be great.
So I have to tell this story. So after the morning sessions, Chuck gave his presentation right after Louis did, and Harold Brooks was in the middle. And a couple of presentations later, somebody asked a question, Chuck responded, and then Chuck says, okay, now that I've finished that, I'm going to respond to something Louis said after my talk because he ate it all my time. But after that, somebody tweeted and said, I would pay money to watch a reality show with Chuck and Louis living in an apartment in Finland. So
if you
so
go back
Louis,
to reality programming, Stephen, there's your first idea.
I'm about to retire, so there's a job op.
Stephen Neslage, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Oh, swag. There's swag. James, we got swag. We never got swag before.
What?
We have swag down here.
What?
And my boss isn't going to...
It's to keep your F5 IPAs cool. The Oklahoma F5 IPAs.
Ricky Matthews from...
They brought us koozies from the Weather Channel for Weather Geeks. So we're putting these to good use in the audience tonight.
Bruce is the king of swag. So, you know. So
the Weather Channel, a good plug there. F5 Weather Geeks.
So
thanks for the swag. We appreciate it. I'm gonna put that to good use.
So Stephen, we'll look forward to being on the Weather Channel with you very soon. Thank you very much. Last.
All those things I said about you being a spy.
Oh,
Not
brother.
paying attention to Brian. He's old. But
so we before this thing goes down the tubes, anything you need to say?
I'm still looking for Marshall because I thought this was his show.
we got James. We got one more set of guests, real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were done.
Yeah, we got one
I am
more.
so sorry.
Yeah, I want to introduce
CoCoRaHS.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to introduce Henry Regis and Nolan Deskin from CoCoRaHS. And I'm worried. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I always get you guys mixed up. Y'all need to quit dressing alike. God. Sorry about that. But, you know, I worry, you know, because I rely on what you guys do, and a lot of us in this room and all over our enterprise rely on what you do, and I worry about funding for it. So is that ever a threat to you guys? And, you know, can you speak to that?
Funding for a volunteer network, where would that come from? So far, it keeps happening. I worry about it, but I don't worry too much because people seem to love this lowest common denominator plastic rain gauge in your yard deal.
It's amazing to me what's there every day for me, and the dedication, and you know what the volunteers do. You know, how do people get involved? What can we do as an enterprise to help? You know, what's the deal?
Henry, take it.
Sure. You know, it would be great if. Well, let me ask, how many CoCoRaHS volunteers are out here right now in the audience? We got a couple of you guys have heard of us. That's great. Getting the word out, I think, is just about that people can do this. It doesn't take a lot of time. They can do it in their backyards. It keeps track of their rainfall measurements, and then the data actually gets used. So it doesn't wind up in a book somewhere, but it's used by the Weather Service. It's used by agriculture. There's tons and tons of real-time applications for it. So I think that motivates the volunteers a lot to know that when they're doing something, it can make a difference. And especially if that one observation, we had one a couple of years ago in where was that again, Nolan? In Texas, in Kamala County, and the guy had 7 inches of rain, 7.12 inches, and everybody around him had 0. And we thought maybe he put the time in 7:12 in the morning, but it wasn't. It was actually this one thunderstorm just sat there and pulsed and rained and rained and rained, and so people can make a difference, and it having more eyes and ears on the ground it paints a better picture. So,
and every time that I wake up in the morning, look on the maps and see 5,000 reports that day, 7,000, and a half hour later, 9,000. It's just a thrill every day to watch and say, what's making these people do this? What? And it's beautiful, but I hope it keeps happening.
Well, we do too. Nolan Desk and Henry Regis, thank you for bringing down the end of the show tonight. And we're glad you're here. You're here all week, I guess. Like the lounge singer at the Holiday Inn, you'll be here till Thursday. All right,
try the veal.
They promised to do a dance. Is what the reason I brought them on. They were going to dance. And
Oh boy, this is going right down the tubes now.
Is that one of your F5s talking there,
No,
Bruce?
we got to wrap this up quick.
I thought they'd had enough of those to do the rain dance.
All right. Well, James, we'll toss it back to you and let you wrap
All right,
up the show.
Chuck, any final words?
No.
Okay, on that note, when he's done, we're done. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks to the audience.
All right,
Thanks
good
to
night,
Bruce
everybody.
Thomas. Thanks to all of our guests. We'll see you guys next week.